When my husband told me his ex-wife had loved him in ways I never could, I smiled and stayed quiet. But over the next 6 months, I faded into the background of my own home while quietly building an empire he had no idea existed. By the time he realized what he'd thrown away, I was already gone. If you've ever been measured against someone's past, this story is for you. Tap that like button, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe because what comes next will leave you stunned. I used to believe I had everything figured out. You know that feeling when life just aligns? When you wake up next to someone and think, yes, this is exactly where I'm meant to be. That was life with Donovan. 3 years of marriage that felt like we'd unlocked some secret formula everyone else was still trying to solve. My name is Belle, and if you had asked me 6 months ago to describe my marriage, I would have given you that self-assured, content smile and told you we were solid, unshakable, the kind of couple that made other people believe in love again. Donovan was this brilliant architect with intense green eyes that could make you forget whatever you were saying right in the middle of a sentence. I was thriving in marketing, earning well, and we had this stunning home in the suburbs with exposed brick and huge windows that drenched every room in sunlight. We talked about having kids. We talked about growing old together. We talked about everything. Of course I knew about Katrina. Everyone did. She was his ex-wife, the one before me. But honestly, it never bothered me. Not even a little. They'd been married for barely a year and a half, and their divorce happened 5 years before I ever met him. She'd moved to Portland or Seattle, somewhere far enough that she felt like a far-off chapter, closed and collecting dust. Donovan rarely mentioned her. Maybe once every few months her name would come up for some random reason, and I'd feel nothing. No jealousy, no insecurity, because I was his present. I was his future. She was just the past. Our 3rd anniversary started like something straight out of a romantic film. Donovan had booked a table at this upscale Italian restaurant downtown, the kind with soft jazz drifting through the air and candles flickering on every table. I wore the emerald dress he'd always adored, the one that made me feel beautiful and powerful all at once. I remember walking in and seeing him already seated, impossibly handsome in that navy blazer, and thinking, God, I'm lucky. But something felt off. I sensed it right away, the way you notice a song you love playing just slightly out of tune. He kept checking his phone. Not blatantly, not rudely, but enough that I felt his attention drifting somewhere I couldn't follow. I tried to brush it off, to focus on the menu, on the wine, on the fact that we were celebrating 3 years of choosing each other daily. Halfway through our appetizer, I finally asked, "Is everything okay? You seem distracted." I said it lightly, casually, expecting him to smile, apologize, and tuck his phone away with some explanation about work or a demanding client. Instead, he exhaled, a long, weighted sigh that seemed to fill the space between us like smoke. Katrina used to plan these elaborate surprises for our anniversary, he said, his eyes fixed on something past my shoulder, somewhere I couldn't reach. She really knew how to make me feel special. I froze. My fork hovered halfway to my mouth, suspended in midair as everything inside me went still. The restaurant noise faded out, the clink of silverware, the soft conversations of other couples wrapped in their own lives. All I could hear was that sentence replaying in my mind, ricocheting through the tightness spreading across my chest. I forced a laugh, because what else do you do when your husband compares you to his ex-wife on your anniversary? "Well, I'm not Katrina," I said, keeping my tone light, trying to sound unfazed. "I thought you liked that about me." He looked at me then, actually looked at me, for the first time that night. "Yeah," he said quietly, almost like he was speaking to himself. Different. But the way he said it didn't land like a compliment. It sounded like disappointment disguised as something else. That dinner should have been a one-off moment. A slip of the tongue. A brief wave of nostalgia that meant nothing. That's what I told myself later that night as I lay awake, staring at the ceiling while Donovan breathed evenly beside me. But I was wrong. God, I was so wrong. It began small, little comments that felt like paper cuts. Tiny, almost invisible, but sharp enough to sting every time they landed. I'd spend hours in the kitchen making his favorite dish, This complicated beef bourguignon that required a wine reduction, pearl onions, and far too much effort for a random Tuesday night. I'd set the table, light candles, pour the wine, and wait for him to taste it. He'd take a bite, chew thoughtfully, and say, "Katrina made this with homemade pasta." She'd spend all day doing it from scratch. "Store-bought is fine, though, I guess." I guess. Those two words became the soundtrack of my marriage. I suggested a weekend getaway to a cabin upstate I'd found, sent him the listing with a string of excited messages about hiking trails, a fireplace, and unplugging from everything. His reply came an hour later. Asterisk looks nice. Katrina would have already booked it and planned the whole weekend by now. Want me to just handle it? Asterisk. But he never handled it. And the trip never happened. The worst part wasn't even the comparisons. It was how they seeped into everything. I started questioning every decision I made. Was I laughing too loudly? Not loudly enough. Was my hair too straight? Too curly? Too plain? I'd stand in front of our closet every morning, trying on outfit after outfit, wondering which version of me might finally be enough. I dropped 8 pounds in 2 weeks. Not because I was trying, because my stomach stayed twisted so tightly I couldn't eat. Food tasted like nothing. Life felt washed out, muted. And then I did something I'm not proud of. I found Katrina on social media. Her account was private, but I could see her profile picture, a stunning woman with dark hair and an effortless, sunlit smile. I requested to follow her from a fake account. She didn't accept. Somehow, that made it worse. She stayed this perfect, unreachable ghost while I was here, flawed, human, and apparently not enough. But the moment that broke something deep inside me happened in our bedroom. We'd just been intimate, and instead of the usual closeness, the warmth, there was this cold silence settling between us, a silence that felt like a third person lying in the bed. I turned toward him, tried to curl into his side like I always did, and he just lay there staring at the ceiling. "What's wrong?" I whispered, already knowing I didn't want to hear the answer. He was silent for so long I almost thought he'd fallen asleep. And then, out of nowhere, he said it, flat, unfiltered, careless. Katrina was more adventurous. I felt something crack inside my chest. Not shatter, not yet. Just a sharp, splintering crack, like the first fracture in a frozen lake when the temperature begins to change. I didn't say a word. What was there to say? I turned over, faced the wall, and counted my heartbeats until morning. That's when I realized something that would have saved me so much pain had I understood it sooner. I wasn't in a marriage. I was in an endless audition for a role that had already been filled. Every single day, I was being measured against a woman who wasn't even present, losing ground to a memory I could never compete with. And the man I loved, the man I'd promised forever to, was the one holding the measuring tape. I just didn't know yet how to make it stop. 2 weeks later, Donovan announced we were hosting a dinner party. 6 of his college friends and their wives. I should have said no. I should have told him I didn't have it in me to play hostess. But a part of me, that stubborn, bruised part, thought maybe this was my chance. Maybe if I threw the perfect dinner, prepared the perfect meal, wore the perfect dress, he would finally see me. Really see me. I spent 3 days preparing. I made everything from scratch. Roasted duck with cherry reduction, truffle mashed potatoes, honey-glazed carrots, and a chocolate soufflé that required timing so precise it felt like offering a prayer. I cleaned the house until it gleamed. I wore a navy dress that hugged my newly thinned frame, did my makeup with painful precision, and I smiled. God, I smiled so hard my face ached. The guests arrived at 7. Preston and his wife Jade, Mitchell and Renee, Theo and Simone. All successful, polished couples who had known Donovan since college, who'd been at our wedding, who I'd been trying to impress for 3 years. The wine flowed. The conversations sparkled. Everyone raved about the food, and for one brief, flickering moment, I thought maybe I'd done it. Maybe tonight would be different. Then Preston, 3 glasses of wine deep, raised his glass. Remember Donovan's 30th birthday? That party was legendary, man. What a night. And Donovan's whole face lit up, in a way I hadn't seen in months. That was all Katrina, he said, leaning back, wearing this soft, nostalgic smile that made my stomach twist. She rented out our favorite bar, got all our friends there, even flew my brother in from Seattle as a surprise. It was perfect. She really knew how to make things special. The table fell quiet, that suffocating, awkward silence where everyone suddenly becomes deeply fascinated by their wine glasses. I felt 6 pairs of eyes flick to me, then dart away. My face burned. The duck I'd spent hours perfecting turned to ash in my mouth. I forced a laugh, brittle and hollow. Sounds amazing. I'll have to step up my game. Donovan, drunk and oblivious to the tension strangling the room, kept going. Honestly, Bree, he said, looking right at me, and there was something in his eyes, something sharp and devastating. Katrina loved me in a way that was, I don't know, all-consuming. Like I was her whole world. What we have is nice, but it's not that. The wine glass slipped from my hand, just dropped, as if my fingers had forgotten how to function. It shattered against the hardwood. Red wine spread across the floor like blood. Jade gasped. Simone jumped up to help clean. Everyone started talking at once, moving, grabbing napkins, creating noise and motion to smother the unbearable tension. I stood up slowly, carefully, like my entire body was made of fragile glass. "Excuse me," I whispered. "I need to use the bathroom." I walked upstairs on legs that didn't feel connected to me, stepped into our bathroom, locked the door, and slid down the wall until I was sitting on the cold tile. I could hear them downstairs, muffled voices, glass being swept up, someone laughing too loudly, too nervously, and beneath all of it, I could still hear Donovan's voice. "What we have is nice, but it's not that. Our 3-year marriage was nice. I was nice. A pleasant consolation prize for the woman he truly wanted. I don't know how long I stayed there. Long enough for someone to knock softly and ask if I was okay. Long enough to hear car doors shutting as guests made awkward, hasty exits. Long enough for the last fragile thread of hope I'd been clinging to finally, mercifully snap. When I eventually went downstairs, the house was empty except for Donovan. He was loading the dishwasher like nothing had happened, like he hadn't humiliated me in front of nearly everyone in our life. "There you are," he said, not even glancing up. "Can you believe Preston broke that wine glass? Always so clumsy when he drinks." Something inside me snapped. Not shattered, snapped, like a rubber band stretched too tight for too long. "I dropped the glass," I said, my voice steady. I dropped it, Donovan. Right after you told everyone our marriage is nice, but not that." He finally looked at me and had the audacity to look confused. "What?" "I was just being honest. Why are you so sensitive?" Sensitive. My voice trembled, but not from tears, from rage. Pure, white-hot rage I'd been swallowing for months. "You humiliated me in front of your friends, in our own home. You compared me to your ex-wife and told everyone I'm not enough." He rolled his eyes. Actually rolled his eyes at me. "I was talking about the past, Bree. It's not a big deal. You're making this into something it's not. Not a big deal." I was yelling now, something I'd never done before. "You've spent months telling me I don't measure up. That I don't cook like her. Don't plan like her. Don't love like her. And tonight, you made sure everyone else heard it too." "Well, maybe if you actually tried," he started. And that's when I slapped him. The sound cracked through the kitchen like a gunshot. My palm burned. His head jerked sideways. When he turned back toward me, there was a red mark blooming on his cheek and something dangerous flickering in his eyes. We stood there, breathing hard, staring at each other like strangers. "If you love her so much," I said, my voice low and lethal, "go back to her. Because I'm done. I'm done auditioning for your affection. I'm done competing with a ghost. I'm done being your consolation prize." I turned and walked toward the stairs. He didn't follow. He didn't apologize. He just stood there, fingertips grazing his cheek, silent. That night, he slept in the guest room. And something fundamental in the universe shifted because I didn't cry myself to sleep. I didn't lie awake wondering what I'd done wrong. I stared at the ceiling and made a plan. The morning after that slap, I woke up different. There's no other way to describe it. It was like someone flipped a switch inside me, and suddenly all the desperate, hopeful, overreaching parts of me just powered down. I didn't cry. I didn't scream into a pillow. I didn't journal furiously or call my best friend in tears. Instead, I got up, made coffee, opened my laptop, and did the thing I should have done months ago. I took control. First, I opened a new bank account, just mine. Then I called Geneva, my old mentor from my first marketing job in Chicago. She'd been trying to recruit me for her New York agency for over a year, and I'd always turned her down because Donovan's firm was here. Our life was here. Our future was here. When she answered, I didn't bother with small talk. Is that freelance contract still available? 2 hours later, a signed agreement sat in my inbox. High-paying projects, remote work, a lifeline disguised as career advancement. Then came the hardest part. Not leaving. I wasn't ready for that yet. The hardest part was becoming a ghost in my own home. I stopped performing because that's what I had been doing. Performing the role of devoted wife for an audience of one who kept booing me off stage. So I simply stopped auditioning. I stopped cooking elaborate meals. I'd make myself a simple dinner at 6, a salad, some grilled chicken, whatever I wanted, and eat alone. I'd wash my single plate and leave the kitchen spotless. If Donovan came home at 7 expecting something warm on the stove, he'd find me at the dining table finishing work on my laptop. The fridge had ingredients. He was an adult. He'd manage. I stopped planning date nights, stopped suggesting movies, stopped asking about his day, with that hopeful brightness I'd used like a crutch. When he talked, I listened politely, said, "That's nice," or "Sounds stressful," and went right back to what I was doing. I became pleasant, cordial, distant, like a friendly roommate you're stuck with on a long-term lease. The guest room turned into my office, then my sanctuary, then eventually the place I slept because I was working late and didn't want to disturb him. I didn't announce it. I didn't make it a dramatic moment. I just started sleeping there. And he didn't fight it. It took him a full week to really notice. One evening, after finishing a video call with Geneva's team, I came home to find him in the kitchen looking confused, almost lost. "What's for dinner?" he asked. There was this assumption in his tone, this expectation that my day revolved around feeding him. "I made myself a salad earlier," I said, not looking up from my phone. "There's deli meat in the fridge. Bread's in the pantry." He stared like I'd just spoken in code. "Are you still mad about what I said?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt absolutely nothing. No hurt, no anger, just a vast, quiet emptiness where love used to live. "No," I said simply. "I'm not mad." And I wasn't. You can't be mad at someone you've already started letting go of. 3 weeks passed like that. 3 weeks of me thriving in my work, stacking money he knew nothing about, sleeping in a separate room, existing under the same roof while living completely separate lives. He tried, cooking breakfast, bringing home flowers, suggesting trips we both knew he'd never plan. I accepted it all with the same polite smile. "Thank you," I said. "That's kind." No warmth behind it, no feeling, just words filling the silence. That's when the panic set in. I could see it in the way he watched me, like he was trying to decode a puzzle he'd accidentally created months ago. One night, he caught me stepping out of the guest room around midnight, and he stood there in the hallway in his pajamas, looking completely lost. "Do you still love me?" he asked, and his voice actually cracked. I stopped and really considered the question. "I don't know what I feel anymore, Donovan. I just know I'm tired." "Of what?" "Us. This. Me. Of trying to be someone I'm not." He reached for me and I stepped back, not with drama, not with anger, just away. And the look on his face told me he finally understood. He was losing me. Maybe had already lost me. And there was nothing left for him to grab onto. It was a Tuesday morning when I saw the text messages. He'd left his phone on the kitchen counter while he showered, and the screen lit up with a notification. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't even curious anymore. But her name was right there, impossible to miss. Katrina. My hand moved without thought. unlocking his phone with the same passcode he'd never bothered to change. The thread opened, and I read them while standing there in my bathrobe, my coffee cooling in my other hand. I'm glad you reached out. I've been thinking about us too. Maybe we did rush ending things. It's been good talking again. I scrolled up. They'd been talking for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of him buying flowers and making breakfast and performing the role of a devoted husband trying to win me back, while secretly messaging his ex-wife behind my back. 3 weeks of "I love you" and "don't give up on us" on my end, while he was busy daydreaming about the woman he'd never gotten over. I expected to feel something: anger, betrayal, that sharp, slicing pain infidelity usually brings. But instead, I felt this strange, steady sense of confirmation. Like the universe was finally stamping approved on the truth I'd known deep down from the beginning. He'd never moved on from her. I wasn't competing with a memory. I was competing with an active fantasy he'd been nurturing the entire time. I screenshotted every message carefully, emailed them to myself, set his phone back exactly where it had been, and finished my morning like nothing happened. I joined a video call with Geneva's team. I signed off on a $40,000 contract. I researched apartments in Brooklyn. I kept living my life while my marriage quietly dissolved in the background. That evening, I didn't wait for some cinematic pause. There wasn't ever going to be a good moment. He came home around 6:30, loosened his tie, and started rambling about some client meeting. I cut in mid-sentence. "I saw your messages with Katrina." The color drained from his face so fast, I genuinely wondered if he might faint. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Bree, it's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think," I said, my voice calm enough to surprise even me. "You've been grieving your marriage to her while still married to me, texting her while telling me you want to fix us. So, I'm giving you what you clearly want. I'm setting you free." He stepped toward me, hands raised like he was approaching something fragile. "Wait, no. I made a mistake." I was confused. "I don't want her. I want you." I actually laughed, a hollow, empty sound that didn't even feel like it belonged to me. "Now you want me." After months of telling me I wasn't enough. After comparing everything I did to her. After texting her behind my back. Now, when I've stopped trying, stopped caring, when I've already slipped out of the version of me he took for granted, now suddenly I'm worth fighting for. He was crying. Real tears running down his face. And I felt absolutely nothing. "Please, Belle, I love you. I didn't realize what I had until you felt like less." I finished for him. "Until I became the ghost you kept insisting she was." I shook my head. "Congratulations, Donovan. You got exactly what you wanted. You finally know what it feels like when someone loves you less. This," I gestured around us, at the distance he couldn't cross anymore. "This is what less feels like." That's when I told him everything. About Geneva. About the senior director role in New York. About the 6-figure salary I'd already accepted. About the apartment in Brooklyn I'd put a deposit on using money from my own account. Money he didn't even know existed because he'd stopped paying attention months ago. And about the lawyer who'd be contacting him regarding the divorce. He crumpled onto the couch like a marionette whose strings had been cut, head buried in his hands, shoulders shaking. "I'll change. I'll do anything. Please don't leave. I can't lose you." "You already did," I said softly. "You lost me the moment you decided I wasn't Katrina. The moment you made me feel like I had to earn what should have been given freely. The moment you chose a fantasy over the real person standing in front of you, cooking your meals, sleeping in your bed, trying to build a life with you." I walked into what used to be our bedroom and grabbed the suitcase I'd already packed. He hadn't even noticed it sitting in the closet for a week. Hadn't noticed I'd been quietly moving my things out, taking down my photos, peeling myself out of this house piece by piece, like I'd never existed in it at all. When I came back downstairs with the suitcase, he was still on the couch, crying into his hands. A small part of me wanted to comfort him. Old reflexes are hard to kill, but the stronger part, the one that had been slowly forming in the cracks of my loneliness, just wanted to go. "Maybe Katrina will take you back," I said from the doorway. Or maybe you'll finally understand that love isn't a competition. It's not grand gestures or intoxicating passion. It's showing up. It's seeing the person you're with. It's choosing them every single day, even when the shine fades. He looked up at me, mascara smeared, nose running, completely shattered. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." "I know," I said gently. "But sorry doesn't undo months of feeling invisible. Sorry doesn't erase being told, I'm not enough. Sorry doesn't fix this." I opened the front door. The evening air was cool, carrying the scent of rain, and something that felt like a beginning. I took one last look at the house, at the life I'd tried so hard to build, at the man I'd loved who never quite managed to love me back the way I needed. "Goodbye, Donovan," I said and stepped outside. He didn't follow, didn't run after me, didn't stumble into the driveway the way they always do in movies. He just stayed on the couch in our house, crying for a marriage he destroyed with his own choices. I drove away. I didn't look back. Not even once. 6 months later, I barely recognized my life. And I mean that in the best possible way. New York became everything I needed and nothing like what I'd imagined. Geneva's agency was thriving, and suddenly I was right in the middle of it, leading campaigns, managing teams, making decisions that actually shaped things. Within 3 months, they promoted me to senior director. Within 5, I was earning a salary that made my old life look like I'd been splashing around in the kiddie pool. But it wasn't the title or the money that mattered most. It was remembering who I was before I started folding myself down to fit inside someone else's idea of enough. I cut my hair short, started boxing classes, made friends who'd never met the smaller, dimmer version of me I'd been before. I went on dates, some great, some laughably awful. Each one a reminder that I had choices, that I was allowed to be selective, that I was worth choosing. My Brooklyn apartment was tiny, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture was something I picked. Every picture on the wall was something I genuinely loved, not some compromise over aesthetics I didn't care about. I could eat cereal for dinner or cook something elaborate at midnight, and there was no one there to compare it or judge it. I was finally, beautifully, achingly alone, and I had never been happier. The divorce was finalized on a rainy Thursday in October. I signed the papers at a coffee shop, felt absolutely nothing, and went right back to work. Donovan kept the house. I didn't want it. It was full of ghosts, ghosts of who I tried to be, ghosts of Katrina he never fully released, ghosts of a marriage that had died long before I finally buried it. I started therapy with Dr. Reynolds, a warm woman in her 50s who refused to let me dodge the hard truths. She's the one who helped me see that what I went through wasn't just a bad marriage. It was emotional abuse. Death by 1,000 comparisons. Death by invisibility. Death by being made to feel like my love, my effort, my existence were somehow insufficient. "You didn't fail that marriage," she told me one session. "You were set up to fail. He was asking you to compete with a fantasy. No real person wins that game." I cried then, not out of sorrow, but because someone had finally named the thing I'd been drowning in for so long. One morning in early November, while I was getting ready for work, my phone buzzed with an email. The sender's name made me stop. Donovan Reed. I almost deleted it. Almost. But curiosity won, so I opened it.
"Belle," it began.
"I heard about your promotion. You were always too good for me.
"I see that now."
Katrina and I tried reconnecting after you left. It lasted 3 weeks before we both realized you can't go back. The past stays where it is for a reason. What we had, me and her, it wasn't real. It was intense and dramatic and self-destructive. What you and I had was real. And I threw it away because I was too stupid to see it. I'm sorry for everything. For every comparison. Every time I made you feel small. Every day I didn't choose you the way you deserved. I hope you're happy now. I hope you found someone who sees you the way I should have. I hope you've forgiven yourself for whatever you think you did wrong, because you didn't do anything wrong.
It was always me. Take care of yourself, D.
I read it twice, then deleted it. Not out of anger. Not out of spite. But because I didn't need his apology anymore. I didn't need his validation or his sudden realization that I was worth something. I already knew that, had known it for months. I just needed to remember. I looked at myself in the mirror that morning, really looked, at my short hair that I genuinely loved, at the confidence in my eyes that hadn't existed before, at the woman who had walked through fire and come out stronger, sharper, more herself than she'd ever been. You did it, I whispered to my reflection. You chose yourself. And that's the part nobody warns you about when you walk away from someone who never truly valued you. It's not just the leaving that matters. It's the discovering that you were enough the whole time. You were always enough. The right person will never make you question that. So here's what I learned from the wreckage of my marriage. People will always compare you to their past if you let them. They'll hold up old relationships like shiny trophies and measure you against memories that time and distance have scrubbed clean. And if you aren't careful, you'll waste your life competing with ghosts. But the moment you stop performing, stop shrinking, stop auditioning for someone's affection, that's when you see who actually values you. And if they can't recognize your worth when you're standing right in front of them giving everything you have, then you walk away. You walk away with your head high and your heart intact because you know something they don't. You are not anyone's second choice. You are not a consolation prize. You are not nice, but not that. You are the whole damn thing, the real deal. The kind of love that shows up, stays, and builds something steady and true. And if someone can't see that, that's not your failure. That's theirs. Donovan taught me that the hard way. And strangely, I'm grateful for it now. Because losing him helped me rediscover myself, the self I'd buried under layers of not enough. The self who had always been worthy, always complete, always more than what anyone else tried to convince me I was. These days, I wake up in my Brooklyn apartment, make my coffee exactly the way I like it, and I don't think about him at all. Sometimes I wonder if he thinks about me, if he regrets it, if he finally understands what he lost. But mostly, I just hope he figures out how to love someone without comparing them to everyone who came before. How to be present instead of nostalgic. How to see what's real instead of chasing what's already gone.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.